Welcome back to Impact Show. I'm so stoked to be doing this one in Las Vegas, one of my favorite cities in the world, where my wife and I met. We actually had a place here, and it's amazing how the world works, right? Because I'm back in this city, and it all happened from our Impact conference that took place 2 weeks ago in beautiful Newport Beach. I met Jennifer, who leads up investments for Boxable, and she told me about the story of this business, and I was mesmerized because I had heard of it, but I didn't really know all that was going on. And here I find myself 2 weeks later in this beautiful factory, meeting with the founders of the company, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves because they've got such an awesome story. So Paolo, why don't we start with you, and you can pass it on to your son, and we'll just do a quick intro of who you are, where you came from, and how you came up with this incredible brand.
Sure. Very nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Paolo Tiamani, Boxable, building technology company. I'm an industrial designer and mechanical engineer. And prior to this, I had an IP licensing company, which for your audience is intellectual property. So it's sort of mostly patents, and we were all mechanical patents. And just looking to solve a really big problem. And the housing crisis is a really big problem.
Right, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And Galino, you want to tell us your background?
Yeah. So my name's Galino Tiamani. We started working on Boxable end of 2017, and the idea was to turn on the world's most advanced mass production of housing and buildings ever done. We see a huge problem in the market with housing costs and the time and effort that goes into building construction, and we think there's a better way to do it. So we're here in Las Vegas at our factory buildings 1, 2, and 3 now, where things are moving really quickly. It's really exciting, and I think we've actually produced over 500 homes now.
Oh, that's absolutely awesome. Well, thank you for that background. And our show that's been around for several years now has had millions of views on our videos, and we have a cross between investor types, disruptor types, startup types, entrepreneurs, and established brands like Meta and Tesla that watch our show. And you think about all these brands that have disrupted things, the digital license plate, the electric car. Why, in your opinion, has home building been so the way it is for 100+ years in a way that no one's been able to do what Boxable is doing? Can you give us your thoughts on that?
For sure. So we had an industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
And where everything got put in the factory for efficiency and scale, and then the shipping infrastructure got built up around that. And for thousands of years, up until and beyond the industrial revolution, buildings have been big. So they've remained pre-industrial, built in a field, literally, because they're big and they're too big to ship. And then there was no really systemized standard. There was no critical thinking really applied to building construction as a system,
right? Because
it wasn't in a factory. So you had to make one product, one home, sell it, make a profit on that one home.
Sure.
Whereas with a post-industrial solution, you're in a factory, you make capital investment, you hire engineers, you idealize the production building system,
yes,
and then you can build it in scale. And one of the key aha moments for us was when we realized that most residential building construction is 2/3 empty space. Mm-hmm. And then the dollar dense stuff is about 1/3. Dollar dense is labor, dollar dense is material products, dishwashers, stairs, and things like that. So we said, well, we'll build a fitted out core with those elements already built, completely finished, mm-hmm, and the 2/3 of empty space, we're going to fold it up 8.5 wide, 13.5 foot from the blacktop, ship all around the world. And then, so that was, a pretty significant aha moment. Very easy for me to say.
Right.
Very, very complicated to engineer to wind up at a simple result. So that was really sort of the genesis for the company. And from there we said we have to be architecturally neutral. We're going to make rooms that can be further subdivided into smaller rooms, and then we can stack, connect, cantilever to produce most buildings most of the time in any architectural style. And the biggest building shell that we will build will have a 9.5 foot ceiling, a 40 foot clear span, 18 foot on the narrow side. What can't you build with that? These are very large, generous spaces, right?
Yeah, the folding up of the houses, if anyone goes online and sees our product, they'll notice right away the house folds up, and that catches a lot of people's attention. So the rooms fold up from 20 feet down to 8.5 feet so that they can fit on the road and actually be shipped from a factory in a cost-effective manner. And that's what opens up the possibility to have a scaled factory mass production, at a level that really no one's ever been able to do before. And so that was kind of the first thing we figured out. And then beyond that, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on here, a whole lot of other technology and innovation. Both the manufacturing methods and the building materials we're using in these buildings are very different than what you would see in a traditional building. So we're just continuing to try and push the envelope, and really the goal is to get the cost down to a level where it's so much cheaper to build with the Boxable system that it's a no-brainer for everyone. And we think that if we can get the cost down to where it needs to be, it's potentially world domination from there. Scaled mass production in a centralized factory, ship it out to job sites, dramatically reduce the time and costs required to do a building, and still be able to build many different types of custom building types.
Yeah, and if I could just sort of expand on the cost scenario and how we save costs. So because we have a building system, the best way for your audience to think about Boxable is just as Legos.
Right.
Stack, connect, cantilever, everything is on a grid. So as you cantilever something, windows, doors line up, it creates great architecture and just good post-industrial first principles. We have we're a factory, this giant 400,000 square foot vanishing point.
Can't even see the end of it.
Vanishing point factory. If you look, there's a massive American flag back there.
Yes.
But it's so far away, it looks very small. So we have things like, even with our 3 building shells, which is basically these boxes, we have the fewest number of components, the fewest number of unique components. The maximum commonality of components between those 3 building shell, they have probably in the 90-95% commonality with standard dimensions, standard components. That's one thing that really drives down the cost, in addition to what Galino said about doing everything very differently. The other way, for example, D.R. Horton is one of our investors. I think they just crossed 100,000 homes last year, which is pretty good.
In the nation, right?
Exactly. But when they deliver a refrigerator, they have to deliver a refrigerator, for example, to 100,000 unique locations. If when we get to 100,000 product SKUs, those 100,000 refrigerators will be delivered to one location. So you can see the economies of scale. And then also we're able to buy directly, whereas field builders have to buy through intermediaries, and we're able to control those costs. And then because we're buying in volume, we can engineer those products ourselves, working with those vendor partners, both domestically and overseas, to just constantly keep driving down the costs. So there is no washer, no bolt, no component that can be too small.
So given that our audience, a lot of entrepreneurs, okay, so they're all wondering, how do I create a Boxable? Okay, so what's important, before we get into the disruption of the business and the potential of where this is all going, I'd like to know where you guys were in 2016. How did you get this business off the grounds? Because this is larger than life. This is a Tesla factory in Vegas, and what you're doing is such a disruption that you're talking about billions, potential $1 trillion valuation. How do you start? Where were you right before this idea was born? How did that turn into reality? And how did you actually get to step one? I'd love my audience to know more about you and the root of this genius.
Origin story?
So I'll start off by saying that we've both kind of been entrepreneurs and done different projects our whole career. And one thing I realized about Boxable, if you're going to work on something, you might as well make it something really big. Because it's going to take the same amount of effort and dedication to make it happen. So just go big. And with Boxable, we kind of found the biggest problem we could think of in one of the biggest markets, industries in the world. But back in 2017, we just kind of had an idea and a website. I think 2019 we ended up having a third party build us a prototype. And then by 2020,
how many people?
We were just.
How many people were we?
We were just kind of in a garage building a few prototypes by hand. And then at a certain point, we ended up, grabbing this building and going for it for real. And really, it was just me, Paolo, and Kyle, the three founders, just us going from absolutely nothing, a bunch of ideas, one prototype that was built by hand in a garage, and then diving in here and going for it. And it's been totally crazy. Since then, we now have factory buildings 1, 2, and 3, totaling 400,000 square feet. We've built over 500 homes. We have over 100 employees, and we just have a really big kind of aspirations. And it's been a really exciting, wild journey. And I would definitely say, anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, you kind of have to, just have like relentless persistence and just keep going and going.
Was there a single inflection point that gave it that scale to where it turned into something real? What was that like, and what was that moment?
We had a couple actually. So we took a 10,000 square foot warehouse, fairly small, just a couple of miles up the road, just an R&D center. And Kyle and Galli and I, just with a couple of other people, just got to work making these prototypes. And it was always very interesting for the press. It was always interesting. We got a call from a magazine and said, would you like to show at IBS? And talking about those inflection points. There have been a couple. And so
that's the International Building Show?
Yeah, thank you. International Building Show here, which is, it's like the World Series. It's not really world. It's America. But, and so we started there, and Galliano said we had a third party up in Canada do it. We built a 40-foot, two 40-foot building shells, 1,600 square foot, 2-story home, and we attended the builder show. Everything that possibly could go wrong went wrong, by the way, but that's a story for another day. And at the end of the show, folks were excited, and they said, "What can we buy?" And we just looked at each other, and we're like, "I don't know, what can we buy?" And so I remember actually we took. On mountain bikes or dirt bikes. And I remember just cruising around out in the desert with Galli, and we wound up at the top of a mountain. Actually, it wasn't like full Moses or anything. It was the top of a mountain. And we're saying, what are we going to start with? We need a thin end of the wedge to start with this company. And Galliano said, how about these ADUs? How about these accessory dwelling units? It would be our smallest building shell, so that's be the least amount of effort and work and to get that off the ground, and then we could do a sort of Henry Ford thing and just provide this one building shell configured as an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. So we knocked a couple out, still in that 10,000 square foot. Went to the IBS the following year. And the world exploded.
Well, that was during the pandemic too, right? It was that.
I think it was before.
Before 20.
It was before the pandemic.
Before
the pandemic, and we've got Ben Carson coming in and this and that, and we go down to Washington, display the product on.
And Ben Carson was there because he was sharing housing, right?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct. So we did an interview, and that blew up.
Got it.
And then we came back from that show and said, okay, we've got our marching orders. We've got our marching orders, and so then it was a question of funding the project. I don't know how much we want to get into that, but that's really very unique. The way Galliano found to fund the project, and that was, I would say, a second inflection point for the company. It was so innovative, especially for any entrepreneurs watching.
What was that going on? Like, just curious, like.
Yeah, so early on, I was kind of on the phone 24/7, pitching the idea to investors. A lot of them didn't really get what I was doing, and a lot of them were interested in like software things that they perceived as being more scalable, and they didn't want to get involved in some capital-intensive, crazy vision like this. But people were asking to invest, just like regular people. So I started thinking, can we accept their investment? And it turns out we could. So we went through this process of doing basically crowdfunding, where we were able to open up investment from the general public, and turned it on, tried it, and it started working. And all of a sudden I realized I was onto something, and kept doubling down on that, basically using social media marketing to get views. The views, were leads that we eventually converted in certain percentage of them into investors.
Right.
And I realized, this is just a numbers game. The more people I get to see what we're doing, a certain amount of them are going to want to sign on to this. And it just kept working and working. And now I believe we have over 40,000 investors, have raised over $150 million, probably set, records.
This is very similar to who we just interviewed at our show, Aptera, which is the solar-powered EV that's based in San Diego. It's very similar. It's a challenger brand. It's just crowdfunded, and now it's a real thing. And so I think for our entrepreneurs, this is really, really important, is the internet marketing side of what you just said. What was so compelling about the video or assets that you created that got the attention of people to then come in and support the organization? Was it the type of video content? Was it rich media? Can you kind of go into that aspect of it? Because we have a lot of people that have great ideas, but they don't know how to socialize it. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend any entrepreneurs that want to raise money to look into this. And, if you can get in front of the right audience, they're going to be interested. And for us, one of the big breakthroughs happened with this unfolding house video that was one of the first ones that really caught on.
I mean, you've never seen something like that.
Yeah.
It's sexy, it's cool, it's different, right?
And there's a lot of things that can make a video go viral if you're posting something on TikTok. A lot of things with just formatting, the type of content, how soon in the video you get the message across to people, and you can kind of dial it in, and you can hit a home run with just some random video that you would never expect on TikTok and get 5 million views. And what's that worth? So for us, there was this one day, and the angle of the sun was just right, and I filmed actually our house being taken down at the IBS.
Right. Okay.
And it was just a really nice camera angle, filmed it being taken down, and then actually put it in reverse.
Oh, cool.
So
you
looked like
flipped it.
So it looked like it was unfolding, not folding up, because otherwise
Nice.
it wouldn't make sense.
Sure.
And just posted it, and then boom, that video just took off, went viral. Basically everywhere we posted it, performed extremely well, and just kept running with that, kept posting content.
I think that was like the hook of a song, I think. When, first of all, a house that unpacks, that's madness right there. It's complete madness. And I think that, if you think of a song, you think of the hook of the song that you remember, the one line. And I think that that's what people remember with Boxable. So they're flipping through, things are happening, they're browsing online, and all of a sudden this house is unpacking.
Right.
So I think that was the hook of that song. So you need everything, and then you need luck.
Right.
You need everything, and then you need dumb luck. And we definitely had a fair share of that. So I think that was very important for any of your entrepreneurs who are thinking of going down this road. And the other thing, I think that for those retail investors, it has to be personal. It has to be personal to their life. And they're just regular folks, so they're not sophisticated in that space. They could be very sophisticated in another space. They could be plumbers, doctors, lawyers, whatever, but in that space they're not sophisticated. So they tend to be attracted to very personal things, and everybody's crying out for affordable homes. And the use case for our little casita was everybody and everything. I need a home. I need to get my mother-in-law out of the house. I got kids that won't leave. And on and on and on, developers and projects. So I think you need that hook to grab people super early on the video. And then I think for the retail investor, it has to hit them really a personal need. They're not going to invest in some abstract thing. They're more likely to invest in a real personal need.
So to all of our entrepreneurs that want to start a company like this, remember what they said, persistence is key. I love what you said about Ben Carson too, to associate yourself with a credible entity on a topic, thought leadership, that's huge. And then digital marketing to crowdfunding. I mean, what greater example of that than what's happening right here? You take a concept and it turns into an enterprise, could turn into one of the biggest companies in the world. And it's that kind of story that we cover here at Impact. And now that we've covered the entrepreneurial seed turning into reality, let's talk about 2023. We're sitting here right now at the turn of another year. You guys have definitely scaled the business. you look at what are the big issues happening in our country right now. Homelessness is at probably the top, and this is not just in California or Nevada or another state, it's across the country. Can you tell us a little bit about the application of Boxable? Where do you see your biggest markets? You see HUD that's giving out vouchers for workforce housing, affordable housing, homelessness. Can you tell us a little bit about who is the buyer of this, and where do you see in the next 2 to 3 years Boxable going?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, one thing we have is our timing is really good. Like, if you look at issues related to housing, it's just everywhere. It's constantly being talked about. Interest rates are just making things worse and worse. Unaffordability is getting worse and worse. So, we have really good timing here to come in with a solution. And when we look at like who's interested in our product, it's just a huge range of different players from all over. So we actually have, I think, over 170,000 names of people who've submitted a form on our website saying that they're interested in potentially buying the product. So that includes like kind of everyone under the sun. We have people like D.R. Horton, largest home builder in the country. They've ordered 100 houses from us just to build a little village.
Sure.
We have another customer that's doing workforce housing for mining. We are actually, our first big customer was the United States military. They put 150 of these Boxable houses on a military base for military base housing. And then, of course, like Paolo mentioned before, the original idea was the backyard accessory dwelling unit market, which in California is growing like crazy. They've passed a whole number of laws to enable and encourage people to use their
There's tax
empty
incentives
space.
too, right? Where you don't have to pay property tax on that extra dwelling. What did you call it again? The
accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah. So that's a hot thing right now.
They've done a lot of stuff. Like they reduce setbacks. They've stopped local governments from blocking it. I think they just allowed more subdivision of lots. They're allowing you to sell your ADU separately from your main home. Just like on and on and on, like lots of new laws to make that, encourage that. And then also we're seeing those laws are spreading from California to other places as well. So that'll end up being a big market for us as well.
And in terms of the product mix, you're absolutely right when you say timing. So so when you ask who's the customer, where's the market? So you have to have the fourth dimension. It's like when. So when. So we're a building system. So today we're just a casita, which is this adorable little 360 square foot studio home that's caught the public's imagination. As the building grows, if I go to the other end of it, once we have 3 building shells, stack, connect, cantilever, as I mentioned before, you can make 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. You can build everything from a mansion to a very modest home because technology just prices the quality. You can go up to a toll booth, and the guy at the toll booth is making an hourly amount. It's probably not a large hourly amount, and you can pull out an iPhone, and he can pull out an iPhone, and everybody can afford it because the technology is priced. So it's not like with Boxable you have lower quality building shell for homeless housing or affordable housing at a higher quality. It's the right quality, it's the best quality, so you can build everything. So the goal of the company with these larger building shells, when they're assembled, can make everything from high-end homes, townhomes, single-family homes, apartment buildings, and we are on purpose architecturally neutral. Unless you're an Eskimo living in an igloo, I'm sure there'll be an Eskimo offended somewhere by that comment, by the way. But and you're living in some round structure. You're living all around the world in a rectilinear space, and if you've got very tall ceilings and very large rooms that can be subdivided, you can make anything. And then the exterior, because we're structural without exterior additions, what we call gingerbread, whether it's siding or this or that, as you can see outside, we've dressed them up as a variety of architectural styles, because let alone our own country, which is so large that there are many architectural styles from the northeast to the southwest. At one end you've got Adobe, and the other end you've got colonial. All of those architectural styles pretty much can be accommodated by Boxable. So we've engineered the product system sort of, if you like, at the genetic level to do most things most of the time very, very, very well indeed. So to come back to your question about where is the market, who is your market, it's when. Today, we're making casitas. We're going to be rolling out floor plans that take that casita system from studio through to 4-bedroom, really beautiful, single story.
And right now the casita, sorry to interrupt you, it's a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living area, all under one roof. And that's the casita 360 square foot. Okay.
Yeah, casita 360, maybe they'll call it that.
Got it.
So today we're doing that, and tomorrow we'll be doing the full building system as it evolves. And then of course government agencies and specific needs. So from the onesie customer to the developer to FEMA, FEMA for example, has a sort of a history, unfortunately, of through good works, sort of building slums, building low quality stuff. Where with Casita, it's sort of a blank clone. We can configure these things to be provide safety and shelter in that order for single male, single females, families in a disaster zone, and then those almost blank clones can then be repurposed into schoolhouses and homes and things like that. So it's a very sustainable solution where there is no end of life. There's no sort of proposed end of life for the product.
And my wife and I, we built several custom homes, so we know what it's like from foundation to insulation to framing to everything. Right? It is an endless process that never finishes on time, never finishes on budget, whether you're building a small footprint, a large custom home. Tell me a little bit about comparing yourself to the traditional model of building a home, and when it comes to foundation, structure and safety, seismic, those sort of variables that come into your industry of home building. How do you guys navigate through that, and how are you superior to the traditional build?
Well, when we look at building construction around the country, there's kind of different ways to build. So in Florida, you might be building for high winds, or California, you might have earthquake requirements. So we needed to create one universal product that we can mass produce in the factory and ship and sell everywhere. So we ended up having to engineer this to kind of exceed on all those fronts. Structural, wind, energy rating, cost, weight. So it was a big balancing act to figure that out. And I think the product we have now is a superior product to traditional housing on many levels. So then when you look at the actual building process, of course, traditional building is a very fragmented industry. It's slow. It takes 9 months or something to do a building. You have all these different players, like you said, the foundation guy, the framer, the sheetrock. And with our product, we're basically trying to sell this to builders and developers and saying, hey, we've totally shortcut your whole process here. Instead of interfacing with all these different entities and taking all this time and having these skilled craftsmen out in the field, you can skip all that, grab our product, 90% of the heavy lifting's done, and your job is ready way faster at a lower cost. We think they're going to love that, and it's going to catch on and hopefully become the default way to create buildings in the future.
Yeah, and developers don't want to be manufacturers. They don't want to be open field. Developers are marketing organizations and landholders. Don't need to turn the land. So if they can turn it quicker, and then the cost of the money, they can save the cost of the money until the end of the project. They don't have to meter it out to all the trades. And then when the project is done and those trades are scattered to the four winds, where's the accountability? With Boxable, those developers have accountability, and it's just a much more rationalized, simplified process. And some of that applies certainly to the onesie owner as well. And so sort of if you have a vision, at some point you'll be able to buy Boxables on Amazon Prime, deliver the next day. That's the vision thing. Nobody needs their house the next day.
But if you could get it on a drone to deliver it, now that would be batshit crazy.
That's right, that would be great.
I know where you're going with
that.
But
it's about setting that, about setting that goal. And it's like everything in a modern world, from the shirt you're wearing to the table behind us, everything is mass produced and simplified. And that's what we're doing. The supply chain is streamlined. I mean, it's just the sort of the gift that keeps on giving.
So it seems like there's almost like three markets for you. One would just be like government, FEMA, HUD, homeless. There's that kind of stuff. Then you have the home builder that you built a modern assembly line for, and then you got potential end users that might want that casita dwelling on the backyard, or their son or daughter are home from school. You have that extra dwelling. Am I missing any other market that you see as growth potential for the company?
I think it's residential mostly.
Yeah, and then we do have big plans for international as well. The idea there is that once we dial in the formula here, we'll be able to replicate it overseas. And the same principles that hopefully lead us to being the lowest cost producer here in the US, those will apply overseas too, adjusted for those local markets. So we do have a huge amount of interest coming in from all over the world, and hopefully one day we'll be signing on partners to turn on international factories, because these housing problems exist everywhere.
And we're not just looking outside, from the four walls of our building system of the casita inn, or even the four walls of our factory, and we're looking at the entire supply chain. Because when you're in a factory and you're systemized from procurement to enabling customers, whether they're 1, 0, 2, that can all be massively flattened and streamlined. And that yields very, very fast turns, and it really, really lowers cost. Some things we haven't even thought of yet, but those principles are in place. The other part of it is that we consider the Boxable product as a consumer product, but we don't just think of the Boxable casita as a product. We consider the factory that we're in as a product. We're developing this factory as a product, from the tours to the way the fabs dress to everything you see behind us, in terms of a mass production line, but not just the efficiency of the production line, of the entire enterprise with a bow on it. And once we've done that, which we hope we'll be able to do here, we have 400,000 square feet. We have, I hope, a couple of million square feet, 1.5 million upcoming. We call it Boxilla. That will be developed with our engineers and our marketers with literally a bow on it. And once we have that, we can, for want of a better phrase, print them off. So we'll need more regional factories here, even though it's very efficient to ship. But when we go overseas, to Galliano's point, you've got foreign land, foreign law, foreign taste, foreign jeopardy, foreign everything. So we can have JVs, factory franchise partners, but it's still with the same core.
And so you just call that Boxzilla? Because when I came up here, I mean, this place is so big, and our viewers are looking at B-roll right now, but this place is so big that you had to be all the way by the Speedway. I mean, this is nowhere near the Strip in Vegas, but yet you have a bigger vision to build Boxzilla. Can you tell us a little bit about where that is and where you're going, and how our entire global community can help support you to get there? Like, what's important to you, and tell us a little bit about this larger version of what you've already built.
Yeah, so this may seem big here, and sure it is, but it's really not compared to what it needs to be. Both, like, the scale of the problem of housing is much bigger, and our solution calls for scale. So, like, real mass production is not what you're seeing happening out here. This is more kind of proof of concept. And then we have a plan for a real true mass production that would give us all the efficiencies and economies of scale we need to push the cost down to where we think is the lowest that it can be. So that's kind of like the next step of what we're planning right now. And here, things are going really well, really exciting. And then we have a plan, we're calling it Boxilla, for that next level of scale. So hopefully that's going to be down the street from here in Vegas, several million square feet, producing like a massive quantity of housing. It would be the largest, most advanced housing factory ever done. And when we look at, like, what do we want this to be like, or what are other examples out there of what we're doing, we can just see automobile makers. That's like the best example of advanced modern mass production. If you look on YouTube, type Ford F-150 factory, or look at the Tesla factory, and you're just going to see a sea of robot arms. You're going to see stations moving every minute. So like a Ford F-150 factory is putting one truck out of their factory every minute. And that's where we need to be with housing. And it's a no-brainer that obviously we need to do that with housing. And guess what? It's being done with other products. It's not like that crazy to think that we could do it with housing. And now that we've solved that shipping issue where the buildings, the houses were too big to ship from the factory, now that that's solved, that's going to enable a true scaled mass production where you can push down the labor costs to next to nothing. So if you research, what's the direct labor cost on an automobile, it's a very, very low number.
Right.
And that's what we need with housing, and that's what assembly line principles are going to result in is really the lowest possible cost.
And when you look at leading economic indicators on the news, they often mention housing starts, housing, and the automobile business, right? So which is bigger? Which is a bigger marketplace? Housing or automobiles? I don't know, and it doesn't matter, because they're both massive. They're absolutely massive. And if you think about the automobile space, how many incredibly scaled, incredibly efficient, brilliant automobile makers are there? A lot. There's a lot of them. How many are there in the space that we've created, which is post-industrial housing production? There's us. That's us. That's it. So it's a huge, huge undertaking. It's a lot of responsibility. Hopefully we don't screw it up.
No, I think
but we have, we have this massive opportunity, and hopefully we'll create some space behind us, a vacuum behind us, to bring in other parties as well, and get the party started. If I continue my analogy.
As we wrap up this interview, I'd love to just get your thoughts on technology and how technology and innovation plays into what you're doing. Look at a company like Tesla Motor Company, you look at Amazon, you look at Palmer Luckey's company, Anduril. They're all playing off of some infrastructure and some innovation. When Elon started Tesla, his big move was the supercharger network before the nodes came on it, right? And just really dominating that and getting that in place. Supply chain for Amazon, Anduril, as it comes to their Lattice operating system for defense. What is that secret innovation ingredient that gave you guys this explosive scale, and how are you using technology to leverage these units in an interconnected way?
So that's very interesting. So oftentimes when people look at a company and they see an aha moment and they see, well, for us it's the folding, but the reality is the big innovation is backed up. You've got the boat, and then you've got the hull of the boat with all the critters on it. And so any aha innovation is then backed up with a huge number of subset innovations. So that's one thing to think about. We are not a housing company. We are a technology company. So technology can either be digital or physical. So if you're digital, you can scale quickly, and you can also crash quickly because the barrier to entry is low. The physical technology, much harder, because I don't know, it's the real world. Maybe, unless it's a simulation, but we'll call it the real world. So that's much, much harder to scale, much harder barrier to entry. If we look at our staff, we have folks from Bilstein, we have a lot of people from Tesla. We have nobody from the housing industry, a couple of guys maybe, for perspective, but all of our engineers are pretty much from the high-tech space, and we are overweight for our product category with engineers. And we have something like 60, 70 patent filings. I think D.R. Horton, as much as we love them, may have zero. And they're the biggest. They're the biggest in the business. So we're very much a technology company, and it's technology that has improved the quality of life for mankind for thousands of years. It's not been government. It's not been anything other than technology that has slowed the cost of living and improved everybody's lifespan, lifestyle. So, it's very, very interesting from that perspective, and this is the first time I think that globally, by globally I mean the whole product system, the whole ecosystem, where technology has been applied to the problem.
And I feel like a lot of home builders, and you see in these big trade shows and such, are all talking about home tech. I mean, for the last 10 years, it's IoT in the home. It seems very sort of reactive. How are you guys using IoT in your actual footprints when you deliver these units? What sort of technology is being embedded into the unit for the user? Any thoughts or comments on that?
Let me take that, if I may.
Okay.
So I'll give you one perfect example,
Okay.
one of many, many, many. So if you look at Apple and Google and phones and the thoughts of home innovation, there's a lot of people in the home innovation space, none of it works because none of them talk to each other because
Right.
they're all competing.
Right.
So on some level, they sort of sabotage each other,
Right.
and there's no greater good.
Sure.
So none of it works. So we're developing here, just beginning, where we control the four walls, everything inside. So we want to make it all work together.
Love it.
For example, we have our character here is Frank. He's a little 3-foot pig,
Okay.
3 little pigs, blah blah.
Oh, okay.
And so the goal is you can say, Frank, do this, do that, do the
Okay.
other. And when so it can do anything from putting the coffee on, in the future making the lights, of course, the windows opaque, the blinds, automatically turning the AC or the heating on or off, depending on if the house is too cool, security,
Right.
all those digital things
Right.
that and if you do it right, it makes it feel like the house is responding to
Right,
you,
right.
is welcoming
And
you,
it's invisible.
is putting its arms around
Sure.
you invisibly,
Right.
and it's soft and it's emotional. And we're doing now some breadboards. The guys experiment at my place.
Sweet. Nice.
When I wake up, for example, I say good morning,
Right.
and the lights glow on, the blinds go up,
Right.
the glass goes opaque, the music comes on.
Yeah,
I feel
because
like-
all the IoT units inside my home
Yeah.
are all different products from different
Exactly.
brands that are all trying to talk to each
Yeah.
other, and there's always configuration
Yeah.
breakdown.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Wi-Fi or the camera system on the like the surveillance or the doorbell, anything. These are all
Exactly.
different nodes that are trying to communicate,
Yeah.
and you guys are creating that one seamless, frictionless, invisible tech.
we have a massive opportunity. And
Huge.
we'd love some help. So Apple,
I love
Google.
Hey, hey, you're that Bezos, okay? No, but I
Jeff
mean,
Bezos,
it's a no-brainer because that's an open door for you guys, and that gives you more intellectual property, and gives more valuation to the business. I think
Yeah.
that's genius. That is awesome.
But tech bleeds throughout throughout our entire organization.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
we're post-industrial, we're a technology company. So that's just one lovely example, which is bumping along in the background.
Right.
We need to do other things like, I don't know, get to revenue possibly.
Sure,
How about
sure.
that?
Yeah.
Before we focus on,
Right,
on the
of course.
coffee going on
Right,
automatically.
right,
but
right.
all of these, you have to sort of
Sure, prioritize.
raise everything at the same time
Right,
a little
right,
bit.
right, right.
So
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, this is such an inspirational story. I'm so humbled to have this opportunity to interview you. I think this will be one of the best viewed impact shows. And this is the reason why I created this show. It's really to unearth these stories that have never been told necessarily to my marketplace and our audience that we've built over the years. And as Nepal and I, we landed at the airport, we were driving over here, and I looked out the window and I was looking at Veer Tower. And my wife and I met in the city, and when we got married, I said, look, I'll get us a place here. And I didn't want to buy another home, okay, but I wanted to buy something that was small enough to where we could come out to Vegas and zip in and zip out. And we have a beautiful home. It's not huge, but it's big. There's a lot of space that's not used. And I was telling Nepal, I said, you know what? I think where I'm most content is when I'm in smaller spaces. And it's just so ironic that we were driving, and I showed him the unit that we lived in, and here we're at Boxable. And I really believe that living as well has transformed. I mean, there was the day of becoming successful and building a big home and having this big property, big homes, big problems. And smaller footprints, I think you're going to get the most out of life is the functional, utilitarian use of four walls and a space. And I can't think of a greater disruptor or brand or a business where you're doing something really good, because humanity happens. Life experiences, your children, your cooking, your life is happening in those walls. And what you guys are doing at Boxable is really creating that footprint for the next generation. I'm really proud of you guys, and I love this father-son aspect too, and I know you have a third founder as well. But maybe as a last question, I would just love to know that dynamic. I don't think I've ever interviewed a father-son team. How has that worked for you guys? I mean, I would think, I have a son too, and I would love for one day to build business with him. How's that dynamic worked, and have you guys been able to keep that friendship yet, work together? Just curious.
Yeah.
I think we make a great team, very complementary skill sets. I'm kind of more on the business and marketing, and he's more on the design and engineering side. And it's just been great. We both have done our own kind of separate projects before this, and ended up coming together on this one. And I have kids of my own now, so it's just great to be with the family.
Wonderful.
And that's my total revenge, is
Yeah.
that he has kids of his own, right? But yeah, I sort of expand on that. So Galliano's a serial entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur. He said, so I'm sensitive of the fact that there's a father and son, and people might presume that father's leading, right? He doesn't care, but I'm sensitive to it. But it's just not the case. He's leading a majority of the company, and as a serial entrepreneur. And also in terms of skill sets, I'm definitely on the vision, engineering system, all those first principles, but that can get very woolly. And how do you make that happen? How do you get to the woolliness out there? And Gali is actually brilliant in pretty much most areas, because it's sort of IQ. It's an IQ issue. So it doesn't matter whether it's the business aspect or the engineering aspect, which he contributes uniquely. He goes from A to B without zigzagging. He almost teleports to B, and especially if it's an entrepreneur and it's a startup, you can't afford to zigzag. You have to get to revenue quickly. I would say that's a key thing. And then on the family side, of course, there's trust. This is the ultimate trust. Huge, and finally, I would say is respect. I find it odd in all of our lives. Sometimes you find yourself maybe being less respectful to someone close to you, it might be a brother or a wife or a partner, than you would a complete stranger. And then you need to check yourself at that point. So I think one of our key things is that we are very, very straight and transparent with each other, but we're incredibly respectful, and I appreciate it. And we're just very, very respectful. And that's one of the keys.
Those are some great closing thoughts. What an incredible story, and probably one of my best interviews. So I'm really humbled, and want to thank Jennifer, who leads your investments, who set this up. Dan McClory, who introduced me to Jennifer. I mean, this is just a tree that keeps growing at the Internet Marketing Association. And Galliano, I just want to say congratulations, and Paolo, with your continued success. And this is what Impact Show is all about, and these are the stories that we try to share with our network. Fresh out of our AI conference in Newport Beach, and now we're here in Las Vegas. I can't wait to share the story with Elon, Peter Thiel. I am a name dropper, but that's how things happen. It's these sort of stories and these sort of investment opportunities that are just one of a kind, and we're very honored to have you at the Impact Show. So with that, we'll see you next time.